Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. My next guest, a dear friend of CPAC and the Schlaps, Kevin Hassett, former senior advisor to President Trump and the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, or like I like to call him, like the super smart economic guy. Kevin, thanks for joining me today.
I thought I was the economic dude. I didn't.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah. I've already told Regina, our producer, like when Matt Schlapp is traveling, I'm just going to bring you into studio and you can just guest host. I mean, we could have so much fun.
That'll be fun.
We could have so much fun. But there's a lot happening in the news. And first of all, I want to start with the Omicron variant. More so because I want to get an understanding on what basically what you're hearing, right? What are you listening when it comes to the fact that I thought President Biden's message was probably more on point, which is we shouldn't be panicked. We're not going to go into lockdown. We should be concerned. But he has put in these travel bans as well to these countries, something that he criticized President Trump for doing, calling it xenophobic. Yet he now has done it himself. What do you think about that?
Right. Well, I think that Biden understands that shutdowns are tremendously unpopular and incredibly harmful. And if we look at the opioid deaths, the huge spike in mental illness, there's a new study out that shows that the kids who have missed school have had cognitive decline for like the first time ever, that all the harm to our society that basically is attributed to the sort of really oppressive policies of Tony Fauci, especially. The President Biden, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but even he sees that, when Fauci talked to President Trump into shutting down the economy, that it was a mistake. But the difference is the media loves these guys so much so that, when I got brought back into the White House to help think about how to open the economy, you can go back and you probably remember that I just got the heck kicked out of me by the Washington Post and everything else as being like anti-science guy. And then Scott Atlas, the same. But the fact is that, the Omicron variant is interesting because it has a whole bunch of the mutations the Delta variant has, which means that it spreads faster and it can make you sicker. But then it has, about 10 more that aren't understood at all. And so it's almost like, if you're a conspiracy theorist, that there's like a new bioweapon that was made in the Wuhan lab because it changed so much. And so people are still just studying it and trying to figure out what those 10 new mutations mean. Now, if you look at the history of viruses, what tends to happen, a virus that kills somebody doesn't spread very much because the person's dead, right? Like, so the virus it wants to spread, it wants to multiply, it doesn't want to kill you. And so the history of viruses is they tend to attenuate over time, which means they grow weaker and weaker. And so it's possible these mutations actually make it less deadly than the Delta variant. But we don't know, and we'll probably find out in the next week or two. And so I do think it's prudent to be super cautious while we discover that, because there are a lot of mutations there that we've never seen before. But of course, we shouldn't be shutting things down. And, the New York State governor banned elective surgery in New York, even though there's no Omicron cases in New York whatsoever. That's the kind of, Democrat overreaction that sort of, I think, reveals that they really do have totalitarian instincts, right? They want the government to tell us what to do. And if they get any excuse at all to do that, then they jump in and take extreme measures. And that's already starting to happen, especially in
I always worry, Kevin, about the panicky mode. And you're right about the governor of New York moving very quickly to ban the elective surgeries and declaring it basically an emergency in the state of New York City. And this is what makes, I think, Americans just so... They're tired. There's definitely a COVID fatigue setting in. You bring up a great point on the mental health component. I thought that the South African president made an interesting point where he said, quote, "We must therefore find ways of managing the pandemic while limiting disruptions to the economy and ensuring continuity." So I think it really brings up a good point about, like, wait a second here. This virus is going to be around forever, and we can't keep disrupting our economy for the sake of dealing with the new variant. We got to learn how to live with it. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm looking away for a sec because you know me, I like to pull up the numbers. But
data guy, let me tell you, lots of data.
I have this weird eyesight thing, so I have to take my glasses off to read them. But Sweden didn't shut down at all, right? They didn't shut down at all.
Right.
But the rest of Europe did. And as of last week, 11.48% of Swedes have gotten COVID, as opposed to 12% in Austria that had all these constraints.
Right.
And 11.15% in France that was totally shut down the whole time. And so, and then on deaths, there's like no difference at all. And so Sweden didn't do anything. They did what, basically Scott Atlas advised, and they ended up with the same number of cases as the people who shut down. And despite that, Austria is shutting down again. Germany has banned Christmas. Did you see this? Like, how
Wait a second. You said Germany banned Christmas?
Well, they have these wonderful Christmas markets.
Oh yes,
right?
The markets.
It's a reason
right.
to go to Germany that time of year, and the Christmas markets are banned.
Right.
Unless they change their mind. And so the fact is that people are overreacting again. Remember, the Christmas markets are so wonderful because they're outdoors in the snow.
Yeah.
And we know that it's really hard to spread the disease if you're outdoors. And so I think that COVID, when historians look back, it made people lose their minds and pursue policies that make no sense whatsoever. But it also opportunity for the leftists that I write about in my book, The Drift, who really are totalitarian socialists, to take over and have the government tell us what to do with our lives. And they love that opportunity, and they're taking advantage of it.
Can I ask you, Kevin, because you were right in the center of this during Operation Warp Speed and making these really difficult decisions between economic lockdowns and also just public safety. Is there a lesson you learned when you were sitting in those meetings when where you were trying to find that balance between the health officials and the economic advisors?
Right. The thing that I learned is that the government health officials are profoundly low quality scientists, that most of them are just stupid. So if you look at the conversations that were happening in the task force, I never saw Tony Fauci present evidence or a scientific paper or anything. He just spoke, as if he was the pontiff, saying we need to do this, we need to do that. And then when somebody said, hey, could you explain to me why we need to do that? Could you show me the paper that shows that masks work or that this won't hurt kids if you keep them out of school? That basically he never had anything, but right after you did that, you read about what an awful person you are wanting to kill people in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And so one thing I learned is that when you spot a profoundly partisan person like Tony Fauci, you got to fire him right away. He's still out there. Now the Bidens, thankfully, are kind of disregarding him, it seems like, right? I mean,
Kevin, no way. He is front and center. They let him go on TV all the time. He is still the TV darling. So the Bidens, I think, have no control over Fauci.
He would shut us down right now, for sure. And so the interesting thing is that it shows how partisan he is, right? So he 100% wants to shut down right now because that's what he wants to do. He's Lord Fauci. And if Trump says, no, we're not going to shut down, then Trump's the murderous guy and everybody who dies, it's his fault, right? But if Biden says, no, actually, we don't want to shut down, then they just don't talk about it, right? It's really, so anyway, the thing that I learned is that America's media is so sick that they really don't care about anything other than power, and they're willing to let people die because of bad advice from idiots like Tony Fauci.
Kevin, that is the most beautiful answer I've heard in a long time. I cannot agree with you more.
I never call anyone names, but I know.
I was going to say, you're like the nice guy.
He knew they were doing these experiments at the Wuhan lab, and he knew that it was possible that something bad would happen. And I was in the Oval Office when he said, no, 100% it came from a pangolin, or almost 100% it came from a pangolin, which is a weird armadillo-like creature. I was there when he told the president that didn't happen. But the point is that if you knew these experiments were going on, if it were me, I would, even if I didn't know if there was a problem, I would just go in and to say to the president, it's probably from the wild. That's what the first reports are. But let me tell you, if it leaked from the lab, it could be something really bad. And so we should probably take a risk-averse strategy. Instead of doing that, he covered up his tracks right at the beginning when we potentially could have kept the virus out of the country. And he fought the president when he had the travel ban on China.
Right.
And so when I look back at that, it's really about the most profoundly disturbing behavior I've seen from a public official in my lifetime. And I'm just a PhD economist guy, economics professor guy. I don't usually speak like that. But,
you don't.
But this is a guy. No. This is a guy who really has not served America well, but has served the Democrats well. And if you look at his exchange this week with Ted Cruz,
Right.
where he basically, Ted Cruz says, like, I believe Ted's right, that there's an argument that Fauci lied before the Senate and the House.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, well, I think, he should be prosecuted. And then Fauci's talking about January 6th, and Ted Cruz should be prosecuted for January 6th. The point is that the top health official of the U.S. should not be engaging in partisan squabbling with a senator. That's just not what they should do. But that's what he's doing, and the reason he's doing it is that they've made him their partisan darling and they probably used him to defeat President Trump, and he knew it all along.
Yeah, no, it's bad. You're so right, and I got to tell you, to all of our wonderful viewers, Kevin Hassett literally is one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with in the White House. He was like the easiest. I can tell you about the more difficult personalities, but we won't do that on this show. But I do want to talk about your new book. I'm so thrilled. It came out this year, The Drift. There it is, The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. Give us a quick summary. What is it about? Why did you decide to write it?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that there are a couple of points about what the book's about, but the way I like to describe it is that, and you have this happen to you too, Mercy. It happened at CPAC down in Dallas. That I'll go to the bar, which I think the reason, Mercy, you liked me is I always had wine in my office, right? I'm Irish, so I think. But the fact is that when I hang around with friends or even Democrats who hate the president, then they'll sort of say, "Hey, what was it like in the White House? What did you do?" And I have a lot of stories at the beginning about what we did, the policies we pursued while we were basically fighting socialism, and how successful they were. And then at that point, I get sort of like a puzzle is presented in the book that, geez, so President Trump, sure, he tweeted, tough stuff, but he had incredibly successful policies that really helped, especially the little guy. Blue collar workers, African Americans had the lowest unemployment rate ever, the fastest wage growth. Wages grew more for African Americans than for Caucasians. Income inequality declined. 3 million people came off of poverty. Those are the things you should want out of a president. And yet the left did what they did to him. They crucified him. And the second half of the book is basically a deep dive into why that happened. And I explain it, I think, with very explicit accuracy. And basically what it is that totalitarian socialists have taken over the universities. They're indoctrinating our students, but they've been doing it for a long time. They're indoctrinating our kids to be totalitarian socialists, the kind of people that beat up a conservative if they go to campus. Those people are then going and getting the top jobs at places like the New York Times. And then they're determining what the mainstream media says, which is basically whatever it takes to push socialism, totalitarian socialism. And then if you stand up against them, then you're just not from Harvard. You're not a respectable person. You just don't understand. You're an idiot.
Right.
And so that's the way they treat us, sort of really quite effectively. But the thing that they didn't understand, and this is the thing, there's a lot of reference to academic people at the end of the book. A lot of people say socialist this, socialist that, but don't ever define socialism. So this book really tells you what socialism is and connects Democrats explicitly to it. But what happened was that when the internet was invented, way back in the 60s, wasn't Al Gore, then this theorist, Marshall McLuhan, looked at the internet and he said, oh, well, we're going to move kind of from a curated society where the elites tell us, what the news of the day is, to a competition for attention, or a global village, he called it, where basically everybody's going to compete for the attention of everybody else. And the elites are kind of going to lose their power. And that's really not going to sit well with them. And that's the story of Donald Trump's victory. But where we are right now in history, and I know you want to talk about Jack Dorsey too, is that McLuhan in the 60s, Mercy, when you read these segments of the book, you're going to find it chilling. McLuhan said that, well, once the elites recognize that, they're going to organize inattention. That's what he said, organize inattention. And that means cancel people, basically organize taking people out of the competition for our attention, taking people off of social media and so on. And so
that's intriguing.
He saw exactly, looking forward from the 60s as just a theorist, he saw what Jack Dorsey and those people are doing. And so I think that we're at a crucial point, a crucial moment in the history of our country, where the people who have stood up against the totalitarian socialists have, basically used social media and the internet to do so. And they're being canceled in unbelievable numbers. The America First Policy Institute has launched a lawsuit about social media, taking Trump off of social media. And they put up a website asking people, tell us your story if you're a conservative that's been canceled. And they're up to about 100,000 stories. And we had a board meeting where we had someone report the stories, and they were chilling. And so it really is the case that these organized elites are trying to shut us all up and take us off the internet and take us off social media and keep us, for goodness sakes, off of the networks in order to, get their victory. And so I think that if we're going to win, and I think we can win, then we have to understand what they're doing, understand their tactics, and stand up collectively against that. And so the second half of my book, after, there's a lot of inside Trump White House baseball stuff in the first half of the book, but the second half of the book, I think I map a strategy for victory for us against these people. But they have to be taken seriously. They're really trying to do this.
Well, I just want to ask you get your quick reaction to Jack Dorsey. You bring up a good point of these elites trying to shut us down. Will it make a difference with Jack Dorsey stepping down as CEO of Twitter?
Yeah, Jack Dorsey showed himself to be, a sort of, again, an angry partisan man. And I think Facebook is, has gone way too far as well. They're looking for any excuse to get rid of Donald Trump. And they found one. And I think that if they didn't find that one, they'd have found something else. But the good news is that it's bad for the share price. And so, whenever a CEO leaves, it's usually not voluntary. And my guess is that people are very disturbed about how much Twitter stock has fallen under Dorsey, because he is basically telling half of America, excuse my language, screw you. I don't care what you think. If you don't spout the party line, we're going to kick you off.
That's so unfortunate. Well, Kevin Hassett, the book's called The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. You got to get it. It's a great stocking stuffer for this Christmas. So thanks so much for joining us. Love your insight. I definitely want to have you back. We have so much to talk about on the economy and everything else. So I'm going to plan this when Matt Schlapp is gone, that you're going to come in the studio and we're going to guest host the show. It'll be a lot of fun.
That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay, see you soon. Well,
Thanks so much. And to all of you, remember to follow us on social media at CPAC, at M Schlapp, at Mercedes Schlapp. There's always a lot of fun stuff happening there. Remember to register for CPAC February 24th through the 27th. It is going to be in sunny Orlando, Florida. And I got to tell you, we're going to have the best speakers in town, including Kevin Hassett and the gang. It's going to be fabulous. And we thank you always for watching our show. We've had a great time doing this show and continue to bring you the latest and the greatest on what's happening in the news and making sure that we're not canceled. Thanks so much. Good night. And we'll see you again tomorrow.